I think this is about her posting pictures, right?
I already posted your picture. I gave you a
Kinda
picture of
bored
my
with the
ass. I
picture
gave you
thing.
a picture of my tits. What do you want?
Hey, chill. I'm not that
You
interested.
want it? If you want to,
Those look very natural, man.
well, that's because they are natural.
Yo,
Holy
so how
shit,
long you been in
that's
training?
amazing.
We're good now, Tom.
I've been taking pills for like 8 years.
Damn, dude, that's so weird.
8 years?
But they look good. I mean, for a woman, that's great.
They're 32C, so they're rather
No, they're
large.
not.
There's no way.
Yeah, they are. They're 32C. That's what I wear.
Bollocks.
Oh no, those do look about 32C.
Yeah, those aren't C's, sweetheart.
They're C's, honey.
No, they're not.
Yes.
That's a B.
I'll tell
Oh
you.
fuck.
I've had them measured for bras multiple times.
Yeah. Look, if you
I'm
got a
gonna need
training
to see
bra,
the
it'd be
authentic
nice
photograph.
and roomy. A lot of room to grow into.
Training, bro.
So you're a theist. What made you become a theist?
Jesus.
I was logically convinced of the existence of God.
Yeah, I want to hear this logical argument. It sounds fascinating. What was it?
I just got presupped for a month and finally gave up.
So you're a presuppositionalist?
What?
No, not me. I just couldn't argue against I couldn't disprove the argument. When I can't disprove an argument, I either agree with it or toss it away. But this one just made too much logical sense to me to just toss in a trash bin.
You're probably.
So if you agree with it, then you're.
You are perhaps the first person that has ever been convinced, at least on here, that I know of, in Hangouts, in Discord, in all these debates.
By precept?
That has ever been convinced by the presuppositional argument.
Does he?
Well,
do you even know what it is? Do you know what the precept
I-
argument is?
I was convinced of the logical necessity of God through precept. It was a guy named Dave from State Farm who convinced me of the grace of Christ. But, I mean, I grew up in a Jewish Catholic household, so I already had a basis for understanding God. I just
This is a crypto troll.
Yeah, this sounds like trolling.
Me?
No one's
Why?
gonna touch Dave from State Farm as a fucking commercial.
No, this is name on Discord, Dave from State Farm.
What?
This guy's name on Discord, mate. Here.
Colton, that is the fucking faggiest Photoshop I've ever seen.
I mean, I have no. I mean, what you think? I'm like just here.
We might have to note chat Colton. He just insists for the Hitler stuff. Can you just note chat him, please?
No, leave him. It's fine. Who cares?
I care.
Why?
Oy vey.
I mean, I would say that the issue with precept is that
Because
people.
Discord bans servers that have all that shit on it.
Yay.
So that's fine. But you were saying about the precept?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue that I have with precept is that most people that run the presuppositional argument, that's all they do, right? It's just an argument to win, but they never get to talking about the gospel.
Yeah,
So
but it convinced you though, right?
It convinced me of the logical necessity of God. It didn't convince me to accept Christ, but it did convince me that.
So you
think? But with the precept argument,
hold on.
One person at a time, people.
Hold on. Look, the precept argument is specifically dialed in so that you'll not only accept not just the bare bones concept of God, but the Christian theistic. You can't separate one from the other.
Yeah,
not in that argument.
You still have to accept and repent, mate. It's a two-part process.
Trust me, I know, but that's irrelevant to what I just said.
What he means is that you're convinced of this, but it's the Christian God that you're convinced of, but you're talking about how you don't believe in the Christian God.
Yeah, the precept argument doesn't just say, hey, the logical necessity is for a bare bones God. It's a logical necessity for the Christian theistic concept.
I firmly understand what the precept argument is, I firmly understand the difference between arguing for a God position and a Christian God position. I understand the distinction between the basic logical argument and the Van Tillian argument.
Mhm.
All right. But you still have to give the gospel.
Yeah, so that's not for that argument, right? You're giving a
It's a follow-up.
no. You're giving an you're giving
no.
You're completely
There's
wrong.
no
You're
reason
giving
for you to be
what
arguing with me, right?
What you're saying, yeah, there is actually. What you're talking
you
about
angry?
is necessity.
Are you angry?
No, not at all. Actually, not at all. What you're
Seriously?
giving is a necessity
That's just
for
how
Christian
Declan
theism
talks.
to be converted, right? It's
This
for
is
you to
how
be
dumb Declan is.
converted to Christian theism. That has nothing to do
I mean,
with the precept argument.
You're asking questions that really have no relevance to anything.
Kathleen.
I didn't ask
That's
you.
Declan. That's Declan.
Kathleen, but the way I understand the precept argument is not that it shows that God exists necessarily. It just shows that you need God somehow to
Yeah, you need a God to ground.
Yeah, I never made the look. I never
ground
made
your
the
knowledge.
I never made the argument that the precept argument shows that God exists. That's evidentialism, which is
That's what she said.
opposite of what
That's what she
presuppositionalism is.
That's what
No,
Kathleen
I never
said.
said that.
There's
Yeah, she
there's a
said-
difference, but there's a difference between evidentiary apologetics and presuppositional.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
I knew that. So
But what
what
Kathleen just said,
pull me through the
she said-
process. When you say that you were convinced, right, or that you gave up arguing, what was it about you? What was it about the way it was presented that just caused you to relinquish your position as an atheist or an agnostic?
Because I realized that I could only trace my argument back to the dawn of space and time, and I could go no further than that, and that any
Mhm.
claim that I made after the before the creation of space and time was
Your voice is
simply-
shaking, by the way. Continue.
I'm sorry. So that any argument that I would make before the creation of space and time would just be subjective.
Do you think that's a coherent thing to say before time?
Yeah, before time, before the Big Bang. That's
How
as
can
far
there
as
be
an
a
atheist can go.
How can there
That's
be a
as far as an atheist can go is the Big Bang.
What does
That's
that
as far
mean?
as they can go.
What does that mean before time?
Before linear time.
no, what Tom is saying before implies before is a word to separate two events and one is before and
Yeah,
one is after.
There was
Yeah, but
there
that
was a
implies
before.
time. That implies time. If you have
Yeah,
if
but
you have
no, because you're talking about the difference between linear and non-linear time. Before the Big Bang, time was non-linear. After the
How
Big
do you
Bang,
know
time
that?
was linear. Unless
How do you
you're
know
a
that?
theorist.
wait, what?
I said
How are you
unless you're
making
a
claims
theorist.
about before the Big Bang?
Wait, what?
I'm not. I mean, I'm really not gonna get in. I mean, you wanted to know I was convinced. I said I was convinced of precept. What does it matter?
Yes, I was just explaining to you why it doesn't make sense to say before time, because before is a word.
Before linear time. Before linear time.
So, okay, so you
Do you
think
understand what linear time is?
I know what linear means.
What is linear time?
Well, linear means like
Just mean like A theory, and then before that,
What?
quote unquote, before that it was B theory.
Isn't
No,
that kind of
I'm
making a
saying
statement?
that the atheist can only ground his philosophies and his science in events that took place after the cosmos expanded, after the Big Bang, right? He can only take his knowledge to that point, but his knowledge is not enough to have an origin point, or at least my knowledge was insufficient to create an origin point, even though I tried to. for
This was
logic.
something you didn't know until a presuppositionalist ran precept on you?
This is something that I never looked into.
Declan, what is your point, dude? Hey, Declan, what the fuck is your point? What is your point?
Hey, Declan, but just
Declan, what is your fucking point, dude?
Faceless, hold on. Both of you just calm down.
Just
Thank you.
Take it easy.
So no, I just think it's interesting. Like you didn't know that until a precept ran an argument that had absolutely nothing to do specifically with the fact that there was no a theory of time before a theory of time. That's fucking retarded.
Well,
This is why I think you're bullshitting. I think you're bullshitting. And I
well,
think you're trolling.
you can think, you can have opinions.
Well,
all
let's
you
just
want.
find
Everyone has
out.
an opinion.
Let's just dissect the reasons why you became
We
a
don't
theist,
need to
right?
dissect.
But you sound
you
extremely
obviously-
uncomfortable doing that.
No, I don't. I'm not.
Your voice
you
is
just,
fucking
you just
shaking,
happened-
and you're like thinking of stuff off the top of
you-
your head.
You just happen to have like a bug up your ass or something.
No,
You didn't like
no.
attack mode.
Well, you know,
I'm
and
pretty
even if
sure
it was, that's irrelevant to what I just said. I mean, you could think that, but you seem very nervous.
Again, you're
It's,
asking.
your voice
I'm
is
not.
shaking. by the
You're
way.
making,
Go ahead.
dude.
Hey,
Alright,
don't
here's
get
the
mad.
thing.
Don't get mad.
Right, here's the thing.
Calm
You
down.
Make a comment. No, you calm down. I am calm.
Well, this
My
is your
voice
attempt to
not
try to
changed.
get sovereignty over the conversation. I'm not going to let you do that. So go ahead.
I'm not attempting to do anything, mate. People
Just
ask
calm. Don't get so
why I
mad.
became
Jesus.
a theist.
Declan,
I'm
please.
not mad. My voice
Declan, you're
has
acting
not
like a
changed
fucking
from
asshole,
the
dude.
moment I started speaking.
Mhm.
Alright, you act as if every single person on the earth is some kind of grand philosopher. Mate, I'm a
Mhm.
fucking lawyer. I have
Mhm.
never really given any thought as to the creation of logic or the foundational objective
Mhm.
norms that we would ground our epistemology in. Those
What does this have to
never
do with anything?
concerned me.
Kathleen, could you look? I know Declan's getting into this, but could you point out to me the exact point in the precept argument where it convinced you? If you could run through it with
Why
me.
is that
Sure.
relevant? Fucking.
Sure. So they, so I'm in this group, right? I get invited to this group. At first, I thought it was just a philosophy group. I had no idea it was a Christian philosophy.
Just the argument that just the argument. The background story isn't relevant.
So after, well, the background story, because I can't point to like an exact moment, but I can tell you, the events, right? Is that after being asked several times, how can your worldview account for certain things? And going back and actually for the first time analyzing my worldview, I realized that there were faults in my worldview. So then I spent more time.
Okay, I think I understand the point. So you got to the precipice, right? And they put that to you. So how did they account for how they could do that? What was their answer for those holes in your worldview?
The Christian God.
And that was the answer. There was no argumentation for that?
There was argumentation from me at first, but again,
From them.
No, from them. So they were questioning, how do you know? But when you asked them, how do you know this? They just said, well, because of God.
Well, no. They gave plenty of argumentation.
Yeah, like
reasons as to why a God was necessary, but at the end of the day, the answer was because God, because Christian God. It was in absence of your ability to present this. What is your response to that? And because I could not come up with a rational response as to how I could account for these things, it very quickly became self-evident to me that these things do exist, therefore they need some kind of grounding, some kind of universal framework to exist. They are, as I've always understood them to be, what's the word I'm looking for? It escapes me. Eternal is the word I'm looking for. Eternal. They didn't just pop into existence. So knowing that I claimed or understood that universal truths are eternal, I had to find some way to ground them, and because I couldn't find some way to ground them, I kind of finally just said, you know what, this is what makes the most sense to me.
What universal truths were they talking about?
Logic, the epistemology, things of that nature.
How did that argument go? I mean, like, I don't know. I know about the laws of logic, but I'm not sure like what flavor.
Go
ahead.
Well, I mean, so my worldview was naturalism, right? Materialism.
Yeah, I'm talking about what their argument was.
Right, but their argument is that materialism and naturalism can't account for intelligibility.
Yeah, I know the logical conclusion of the argument. I'm asking for like the process. It's really weird to me how, like, you say you completely fucking pivoted on atheism or agnosticism over them beating you over the head with presuppositionalism, but you are very, very touchy about explaining exactly what that is. You know, it has something to do with not moral truths, but truths, absolute truths of some kind, right? You got from the I would think that if I pivoted over one of the most important philosophies that I had held to, that if I pivoted that hard, I would remember exactly what moment it was, and I would remember exactly.
But I do remember the exact moment of that. But that exact moment wasn't a presuppositional moment.
No. When I say exact moment, I mean I would remember what was said to me.
And
I would
I'm
remember
telling
what was
you
said
that
to me, and I would remember the argument.
But what I'm telling you is that moment when I made the mental decision, right? It was not a presuppositional argument that was the final thing.
No, I'm not. Look,
you're
making this too complicated. I'm not saying, right, that they made the argument and then immediately you're like, hot shit, damn, I'm not a fucking atheist anymore, right? It could have been a week after. It could have been 3 days after. I don't give a fuck. But some cogs turned in your head when you were given the argument. And so far, you've not described what that process was like. You've not described in any.
Why do I need? Way. I mean, well, again,
because
I mean,
I think it's odd. Like, so let me just lay this out tonight, right? So first, you come in here, you say you're a tranny, you give pictures that were clearly of an actual woman and not yourself, and now you say you completely pivoted in one instance from being beaten over the head by presuppositions.
All right. Well, first of all. Okay, well, you call bullshit. First off, we'll solve the one thing right now. Hold on one second.
Well, let's not worry about that. Declan's being particularly aggressive with you because he hates trannies. Right? So I'm going to good cop you for a while. Sorry, Declan. I didn't mean to be mean to you. Have you looked at any of the counters to Presup?
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time reading from a guy named Dawson Bethrick on his channel Incinerating Presuppositionalism, and read about 60 or 70 of his articles that, you know, would go in support of my original worldview of materialism and naturalism, and how knowledge stems from, you know, atoms mixing together and creating electrical pathways in the brain that we're
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, the point about the circularity, how do you sit with that?
Epistemic circularity
in the Precept, and how they get out of it just by saying the Christian God.
I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with a circular argument. I think at the end of the day, eventually everything is a circular argument. Right,
but you're saying that you're just saying, right, the Christian God's posited, right? Okay. And you just accept that. That's the problem I don't understand.
So my acceptance of their circular reasoning versus my circular reasoning is that they gave a causal for why you could depend on the circular reasoning, as opposed to my worldview, which could only give, you know, basically like extended evolutionary synthesis or something like that, which is in and of itself, I always understood to be not wholly objective. All right. So to me, eventually, after just reading a lot of things and having discussions with these people, is that their circular reasoning made more sense than my circular reasoning. Again, I'm one of those people that when presented with an argument that makes sense to me, I'm able to change my mind. And because it made more sense to me, eventually I just said, okay, well, we're going to do this. And then from there, it was a presentation of Matthew chapter 6 was the final nail in the coffin for me.
Yeah, this is so the penny dropped. So, okay. I can get the Precept getting you to question this, right? I just don't understand how it was automatically just it's Christians because it was Christians that presented it to you.
I mean, yeah, it made me question things, but it was not a presuppositional argument that made me accept the gospel. It was a gospel argument that made me accept the gospel. Because I had an issue with my tranniness. Alright? Permanent condemnation. Once I got around permanent condemnation, I was able to accept. It's not that difficult. And it's okay if you dislike trannies, mate. Like, it's quite alright.
But
It's
Kathleen,
not that, it's so obvious you're bullshitting.
Well,
Kathleen,
I'll tell you what, I'm going to post something here for you real quick in the main, and you can just add to all my, wonderful whatevers. But there you go. Check it out, mate. That's me. You can listen to it. I don't bullshit. I have no reason to.
Kathleen, so you're saying that.
Oh, fuck, Declan.
You're saying that this precept argument is more compelling to you than ground. You say grounding all of knowledge in the Bible is more compelling to you than grounding all of knowledge in the laws of logic. But grounding, what precepts say is that they somehow solve the regress problem, that meaning the problem that you can always ask for another justification, just by postulating that the Bible is true. But how is it more compelling? How is it more evident that the Bible is true than the fact that the laws of logic are valid? How is it more compelling? Why is it more evident?
The laws of logic are valid.
Yeah. So what precepts will say is you have to justify your use of the laws of logic. You have to justify why they are valid.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, eventually you have to solve induction, right? Eventually.
Yeah, sure. They want you to justify it, but they themselves postulate
right,
that the Bible
they just say God. They just say God.
Yeah, how is that different than saying how is saying that the laws of logic are valid and I just postulate that? How is that different from saying,
because when you say the laws of logic are valid, most people accept that the laws of logic are valid. The issue is that you don't give an origin point for whether laws of
right.
logic.
So let me give you a different origin point, right?
But you don't give an origin point for the Bible, so you have the same problem. You just push it back.
The innate word of God.
What?
It's the incarnate word of God. That is the origin of it.
Yeah, okay. Why are you justified with that? Just saying, yeah, God did it. If there's no justification for that, why do you need a justification for the laws of logic, but you don't need a justification for God?
You do need a justification for God, but he's self-justifiable.
Why aren't the laws of logic self-justifiable?
Because they don't have the nature of creation with them. The laws of logic aren't enough to create the universe. So on top of the laws of logic, you need many other things that carry a certain nature with them to explain all the other attributes of creation in the universe. So if you need all these multiple things to explain all the nature of everything in the universe, eventually you get down to a point where it's all just becoming subjective, and you've lost any objective framework to ground anything in it. You could say, yeah, the laws of logic don't need an origin point, but other things do need an origin point. And when you have differentiating origin points, when you can't point to one objective grounded framework to say that this encompasses all the nature of all the things in the universe, when you need multiple things to do that, you run into contradictions. You run into paradigms. You run into paradoxes.
Wait, the dispute is not about the origin of the world, right? The dispute is about how to ground knowledge, how to ground all of the things you know. So the precepts say that you need the Bible to ground knowledge. So as your starting point. And the usual skeptic will say, I can rely on the laws of logic. I ground my knowledge on them. So both positions ground their knowledge in a starting point. It's just that you say that God is
what I used to do.
Yeah, that's what. But you just say that God is the starting point. But
Well,
I don't.
that's what I used to do. My worldview used to be naturalism and materialism, that the laws of logic were universal and we just happened to discover them, right? But that doesn't not make them untrue. But again, if you're going to say that the laws of logic are infallible, and if you're going to say that the laws of logic are eternal, okay, so that accounts for logic. That does not account for the nature of the rest of the universe. It only accounts for the laws of logic. So now you also have to account for all these other things in the universe and why they don't need origin points and why they are infallible and things like that.
Again, that's another issue. Talking about where the universe comes from is not the dispute that pre-suppers have with.
Yes, that's the ultimate point, dude. The ultimate nature of reality is the what they're getting at. Since you cannot account for that, then you need an explanation. That's where they insert God as the reason for all the creation and shit. But that's a different worldview.
An account? How does magic give an account for anything?
Yes. How?
No. Listen to me. Listen. What you're not understanding is that these are two different worldviews. Okay, Darth is using your own standards to judge your own worldview. And if you were a rationalist, as this girl is, I mean, Kathleen, you would conclude the same thing, because obviously you cannot account for the ultimate nature of reality. Therefore, you must be open to another, explanation. Now, you take another worldview, which is the Christian worldview, as a way to interpret the world, and it makes sense, if you will. It's not that they're using the Christian worldview to disprove your worldview. No, they are using your standards to disprove your own worldview.
The point is that they are saying that the way people usually think, grounding your thinking on the laws of logic, is arbitrary. They are trying to say that if you ground your knowledge on the laws of logic, then that's arbitrary, because you can't give a justification for that. But saying God made it is just as arbitrary. You can still then ask, yeah, well then who made God and how did he make it? It doesn't solve anything. You're still trapped in the regress problem.
No, because God has, the Christian God, at least, his understanding is that God is eternal, omnipotent.
Yeah, but you're just saying that, but you don't show it.
Yeah, but then if you want to go past the presuppositionalist argument, you can then apply historical apologetics and evidentiary apologetics to know that in fact these things did happen, and this person is in fact existent.
Okay. So you're saying that you have evidence for God being eternal. You have evidence for that, because that was the claim you just made.
That's the need of
That's
your
just
worldview,
definitionally
dude.
true.
That's what you're not getting. You're trying to impose your set of, your worldview onto their own worldview to disprove it. That is not valid, man. It's like them saying, okay, then I will prove to you how your logic is wrong because God. They are not doing that whenever they are pre-supping, dude.
The precept argument doesn't prove. I don't really think. It asks a question. It's asking a question, as opposed to saying I'm right and you're wrong. It's simply asking a question. The presuppositionalist, the transcendental apologist, will say, "This is how I ground knowledge. How do you ground knowledge?" And when you say I ground knowledge in this and that, and naturalism, materialism, and evolution, and the laws of logic, they say, okay, well, how do you account for those things? And when you cannot answer that, you are presented with an issue, because the Christian worldview says that we can answer that.
Right. Now, here's the problem. It says that we can, but what's the argument that demonstrates that?
The necessity of a triune deity for creation. If there is a God, that God's nature must account for everything in the universe. Every single
False.
aspect of the universe must be accounted for by that God. If that God cannot account for in his nature something in the universe, then he is not God. He is simply a very, very powerful entity, which is why God like Allah, who is wholly subjective, cannot be a God, because Allah does not possess the necessary nature for accounting for the entire universe.
But see, the problem is that anything that someone might ask that the Christian God may not be able to account for, you just put it in a definition, right? So someone might say, how do you account for the existence of God? And you're going to say, oh, well, he just existed, right? How do you account for evil in the world, right? You'll just say, oh, well, God didn't make the evil, right? It's against his character and nature to do so. It's this fucking definitional God of the gaps, where it's completely unfalsifiable, in my opinion. And you
using your model, Declan. That's the problem.
Jesus? What's
using
my model?
that model.
You don't know what do you mean my model?
Listen. If you're going to take empiricism as the base,
I don't take empiricism.
Listen, dude. If you are going to do that, then you can do that. And you can.
I don't take empiricism.
Listen, I understand. You take rationalism. If you take rationalism, then you must end in the same way that Kathleen ended. Yes, because reasonably, you have to conclude that since you do not have the answer for the ultimate nature of reality and a way to explain the way reality works and functions. Yes. You need a fucking answer in your own world.
No, false. Look, tasteless. I don't have to know. Standards. I don't have to know the origin of the universe to be skeptical about the Christian theist's explanation of it. And it doesn't follow that since I don't know how it was created or how it existed or how it came to be, that I'm at some sort of deficit, right?
Yeah.
Look, anyone, right? Anyone could come up and be like, hey, I can account for the universe, and proposition X is the cause, right? That anyone could say they have an account for the universe. To say merely that because I can't give an account of how the universe came into existence, therefore Christian God, no, I'm not committed to that. No one in here is. No one's at a deficit.
That's your rule. That's your rule you're applying. Now, if you apply your rule onto your model, then you see that you don't have the fucking answer, therefore you cannot have all the considerations you have.
That I don't have the
that's
answer.
The fucking answer then.
No, I already presupposed from the beginning.
So now, since you are presupposing,
universe came to
now
be,
listen,
right?
Declan,
That's
since
not
you're
a deficit
presupposing, listen,
and it surely is not, it's not a merit to yours.
Okay, guys, hold on for a second. Hold on, Declan.
Since you're arbitrarily
You are correct. You are correct in the fact that you don't have to do any of that up until the point that you make a knowledge claim. Up until you make an epistemological claim about the universe, you are not required to do any of that. But once you make an epistemological claim on the nature of creation, once you make an epistemological claim about how the universe functions, then yes, you do have to account for how your epistemology can be grounded in an objective framework.
Okay, so if I say that the Earth exists, right? That being a truth claim, somehow it follows that I'm committed to Christian theism?
No, it follows that if you make a claim that the world exists, you must be able to back up that claim with some form of objectivism that can show how you can know that world is in fact exists.
What's the argument for that?
You cannot simply reduce yourself to solipsism.
I'm not reducing myself to solipsism, and I want to know what the argument is.
Not only that, Look, I want to know the argument for that claim. To believe certain axioms.
Hold on,
I want to know the argument for that claim. What is the argument that I have to be able to give an accounting for the existence of the reality that I live in at the pain of being irrational?
your
and
own
it follows
standards.
I have to accept Christian theism. What's
So
the
this
argument?
is this is the argument is that okay, so we'll use you say that the earth exists. Okay, so how do you know that the earth exists? You are using your senses, sensory perception, right? That's where your rational mind goes to, and you feel that you can trust your rationality. You feel that you can trust your senses. But that is a subjective claim because we don't know if you are schizophrenic. We don't know if we have any reason to trust what you say.
I actually agree with you, right? And the funny thing is that I used to run that exact same argument. I know where you're going here, right? I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I would agree with the presuppositionalist that everything that I would claim is basically based on faith, right? Unless I accept solipsism. I totally agree with you. Now, what I want is an argument that says that because I accept that, I'm committed to having to accept the Christian theistic explanation for reality.
You're not committed to accept anything. You have free will, right? And again,
that's a completely separate question.
Worldviews. It's a difference in worldviews.
That's
right?
a completely separate question.
You do not have. No, it's not a separate question. You do not have to accept the Christian argument. You don't.
You misunderstood me. When I say that I have to, listen, you misunderstood me. When I say that have to be committed, what I'm saying is that what is it, implicit or explicit, that says that because I accept that every claim that I make is ultimately based on faith, because I cannot justify the validity of the external world, right? Accepting that commits me to having to accept the existence of the Christian God.
It doesn't commit you to having to accept the Christian God. It commits you to having to explain how that could happen outside of the Christian God.
Yeah, see, what
how
you
that
did,
is
you
possible.
just did the exact same thing. Look, you're just dancing around here, right? When I say committed me to, listen, when I say committed me to accepting the proposition of the Christian God, and you say, no, you have to give an accounting of how your world can exist without the Christian God, all you're saying is that I have to be committed to the Christian God by proxy because I can't explain my existence and my existence and the existence of the external world being an agnostic.
No, Declan, you have to explain under your own fucking standards that what you're saying is correct.
Just let them talk.
Okay. Yeah, Tasteless, you getting involved with this isn't good.
Okay.
So, again, I say you do not have to accept the Christian God. But basically, all you are saying over and over again is cognito ergo sum. And that does not answer the question. You can say that over and over and again.
You say I don't have to accept the Christian God, but then you're going to go on to say why I have to ground my belief, right? My belief or truth claims, right? And I have to be able to explain that. That is exactly you saying that I have to accept the Christian God. I'm being a rationality.
You have to give me a reason to dispute the Christian God.
What's the argument?
You have to give me a objective argument that can account for everything that the Christian God can account for in your worldview, absent the Christian God.
What is the argument for that?
Oh, your worldview can account for
what is the argument what is the argument for that claim that I have to give you an objective accounting for the existence of the external world?
Because you are making the claim that the Christian God does not exist.
I've not made any claims.
You have made claims.
Kathleen, you've made the claim.
No, I haven't. I have not made any claims about whether the Christian God exists or not.
When there was someone poking and says, I've made claims. I was asked a question. Why am I a theist? Right? That was the original question levied. Why am I a theist? I gave a response that I was logically convinced through the transcendental argument, and then wholly convinced through Matthew 6 and the giving of the gospel.
No,
right?
But
that's the claim.
Okay, I understand the claim. The issue.
I'm an agnostic, Seamus.
The issue is
for the Christian God either.
Oh God! You can't reduce it down to You can't reduce it down to P or not P. It's not God or not God. There are very different types of gods. you could potentially conceive of, and there are also other answers that potentially you would have to falsify.
That's not a proper disjunctive syllogism. That's not a proper disjunctive syllogism.
So
make
what?
the proper one. Make the proper one. If you're going to make one, make a proper one.
Why should I have to
argument is not,
who's deciding what's the proper one?
Because the argument is not God or not God. The argument is the Christian God or the non-Christian God position.
Right, but the non-Christian God position contains... Hang on, but the non-Christian God contains an infinite number of possibilities that is opposite.
It contains every possible argument except for the Christian, and that is a proper disjunctive syllogism.
Yes, and you would have to disprove every single one of those if you were going to claim the positive claim of the Christian God negating the opposite of those. That's the position you have to take.
You're right. The Christian God would have to disprove every single one of those. You are absolutely right. And we have 3,900 other known deities on Earth. So that means that God has to not only disprove the atheist position, but 3,899 other deity positions.
Yes.
Right? The thing is that the Christian God does disprove all those other positions.
How does it do that?
Because none of those gods, none of those deities, demi-deities, or anything like that, have the whole capacity to have all the nature of creation in their one being.
And how do you know that?
Huh?
How do you know that?
Well, all right. Well, let's just go down the line. We say polytheism, right?
You're gonna go down the line of 3,900 of them?
No, yeah, we can do it. If you want to do it, we can do it.
Are you saying that you know all 3,900 of them?
No, I don't need to know them all because they're broken down into basic categories, right? That's a great thing because you can just get rid of almost all of them just by disproving pantheism and polytheism. So then you're only left with monotheism, and there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of monotheistic religions out there. It's like 20, maybe, right?
You'd also have to disprove ones that haven't been conceived of yet.
Yeah, that's the other bit I was going to get to.
Well, you can see. Well, then that was the old. That was Richard Dawkins' arguments, right? Transcendental noodles, right? The flying spaghetti monster. How does this chair account for this thing, right? How does my cock account for the necessary abilities of intelligence? But yeah. See,
the argument of negation would require that. It doesn't mean the argument from I believe this to be the most explanatory power, but the argument of this necessitates the negation of all the others would require that.
Yeah, but again, that goes back to, and that was Richard Dawkins' argument, and the creation of the flying spaghetti monster. They said you would have to do this for all things known and not known, which is why he created the flying spaghetti monster. The problem is that the flying spaghetti monster cannot account for creation. It cannot account for interpersonal communication. It cannot account.
You're still
simply saying it can't isn't a demonstration that it can't, right? Just dismissing it isn't actually a rebuttal.
So saying it cannot implies that you know why it cannot. Essentially, therefore requiring you to demonstrate how is the case.
As far as Richard Dawkins' flying spaghetti monster or this couch, right? That I'm sitting on right now. If we're going to say this couch is God, right? Well, this couch does not have the ability to communicate with me. It cannot talk to me. It cannot reveal things to me.
Right. If you're going to appeal to a transcendental entity such as God, though, the problem with that is because you don't have any conceptual knowledge of what transcendental realities works as outside of your own space-time mind, because we can only conceive things in terms of the mind that we are within the universe as it is at the moment, like 3D reality.
Sure, we do. We have the Bible.
Right, but that's a three-dimensional space-time object that you have to interpret through 3D space-time eyes and brains. So my point is, how can you conceive of all the transcendental possibilities if you don't have access?
If you want to get specific. If you're going to get
specific. Or ND, if you want to go really specific, because you can't disprove the ND's universe. If you really want to go into that, it's like until you can access the transcendental universe, right, to rule out all the possible options, you're left basically stuck with the 3 or 4D space-time universe.
No, because the difference is that the Christian worldview takes the Bible to be the inerrant word of God.
Great, but
right?
that's your interpretation of it. And this is what Kant gets at, because he's talking about the notion
that interpretation. That's
How do
not
you know
an interpretation. That is the Christian worldview, that the Bible is the inerrant word of God.
I know that's the Christian worldview, okay, that's the position, but the justification that the Bible is the inerrant word of God, or is the inspired word of God, is basically interpreted through your own 3D brain or 4D brain in space-time. You're not utilizing any you can't show that you're utilizing any transcendental knowledge to say that.
Yes, you can. You're using revelation.
Right, this is what I thought we'd get to.
Revelation is transcendental. It is literally transcendental.
Yes, right, okay, so the claim is that God's revealed himself to you through transcendental revelation. Okay, so how have you interpreted that to be the case versus being drunk, hallucinations, anything else?
Well, because again, we go back to, and I know atheists don't like this, because I didn't like it, but if you go back to the Bible tells you how to determine between what is a true revelation and what is a false revelation.
It's circular.
Yeah, but that's just...
And I have no issue with circular reasoning. I didn't as an atheist, and I don't as a Christian.
You have no issue with circular reasoning?
All reasoning at some point is circular.
It's not.
Okay. Only if you talk about proper belief.
That's not true. That's not true, though. That's not true, though. Epistemological foundationalism is not circular.
So
only if you say it doesn't have an origin point. But when you ask for an origin point, it becomes circular.
No, it doesn't. Having an origin point is not circular.
But having like God as your proper basic belief doesn't make sense. If you say, for example, that
go, they will leave you alone. Just please go. You're not going to hit them. Just go. Hey, Doug, come here.
He's talking to someone on the street or something.
Sorry, I live on a dirt road and people drive by and my dogs go and bark at them. And instead of just driving by, they just stop and honk the horn at them. And it's just like, if you would just drive by, the dogs will leave you alone.
Kathleen, what would be circular is when you start with a premise, right? When
premise that includes the conclusion.
Yeah. When your conclusion is in the premises, right? So what you just said, you said, I know that revelation is true. Okay. Then you said, then he asked you, what about your sensory and all? How is that explained? Then you said, the truth that the fact that I can rely on sensory perception is God, right? So your conclusion was your premise. So that's circular reasoning.
You guys are not understanding, dude.
I'm understanding this perfectly, Tasteless. Don't be called Diddy Boy.
No, man.
But the thing is, if you kind of go, you have to start from the notion.
I have no problem with someone else jumping in. I mean, there's 3 or 4 of you questioning me. If someone else wants,
I don't have anyone else jumping in, but Tasteless.
Dude, you have to.
Someone else can open.
You have.
What is it that you don't understand?
You're using B to examine A. That's flawed. That's basically what you're trying to do right now. Now they are not using A to explain B. They are just saying A is correct because all the bases that A has. Now you're saying no, but I'm going to use B to dismantle A. No,
not necessarily, Tasteless. Not necessarily.
Yes, that's what you're doing.
You can reduce the experience of God down to, for example, sensory perception or a feeling like emotional responses, hormonal, and you can reduce it down to further places. So essentially, saying it's a proper basic belief isn't true. But if you're just
relying on sensory perception, mate, that's all your subjective argument.
Why does it matter if that's all I'm relying on? If that's all I've got, that's all I can conclude from.
Because if all you've got is sensory perception, all you've got is subjectiveness, and if all you've got is subjectiveness, you can't know anything to be true.
So what?
You cannot know anything to be true.
That's false. It's only in the sense of absolute knowledge, and I'm not claiming that. I don't have a problem with saying that the sensory perception, or however you define it, for example, like thought patterns or experience of continued,
what you're saying
is a proper basic belief. To me, that's a proper basic belief. God isn't a proper basic belief because I can reduce
Kathleen, you have no problem with circular reasoning. Hold on, she doesn't have a problem with circular reasoning, so you have to agree with what I'm about to say, okay? God doesn't exist Because there's no evidence for God. Because any evidence for God isn't evidence because God doesn't exist. You agree with that, right?
Yeah. No, I don't agree that's my position, but I agree with that.
I'm saying you agree that God doesn't exist, right?
But I said I don't have an issue with circular reasoning. I didn't say I had an
so you agree with that.
I didn't say I didn't have an issue with false circular reasoning.
How do you distinguish?
Because all right, so state your premise again. God does not exist, but God exists because there's evidence, but God, I'm sorry, you're going to have to say it all over again.
God doesn't exist because there's no evidence for God, because any evidence for God isn't evidence because God doesn't exist.
Yeah, but the issue with that is that's a subjective claim. Because you're saying that any evidence for
and
anything...
the claim God exists isn't?
Because
yeah, exactly.
You are saying...
The claim that you receive revelation isn't a subjective claim?
Because you are saying, you are making a claim that any evidence for anything is not evidence for anything. It's a wholly subjective claim. Because you are then basically saying that you could apply that to anything in reality.
So what's the standard
that is that if you then apply that to anything in reality, you create solipsism. I don't know. Are you a solipsist?
No, I'm not, because I'm talking to you, so if I go, I can't be. But the thing is, what is your standard of objectivity that you use, therefore, to differentiate? Now, you say God, but how is that an objective standard?
Because
other than the definitional one.
Because my God can account for all things.
And it comes
I'm not asking your God, I'm asking you.
It comes
if I could talk to God, I'd talk to God. But I'm having to relay it through you at the moment, so I need to know that you're reliable.
What does this mean? Kathleen Tanner, please turn off your voice modulator.
Oh, don't worry about that. My point is, if I can talk to God directly, I would do that, right? As far as I know, I can't.
Talk to God directly.
No, I can't, because I've tried. It doesn't work. So the point is, I'm having to rely on your statement. Your statement that you're receiving reliable information from him. So I need to know that you're a reliable, objective standard. What you're using, essentially. I can't know for a fact that you're being objective until you tell me why.
So let me ask you something, Stargate. Would you be okay if a Christian guy came and told you to try to explain under his worldview, the Christian worldview, your positions under his particular model? You would say, dude, I don't hold to your fucking model. I hold to my model, which is rationality.
Right, yeah, sure. Yeah,
of course you would have a problem
the reason for that
if some guy came and said, you're wrong because of God. That is not
No.
correct.
The reason for that is it's quite simple. All I essentially see myself as is a person wandering through this exterior reality that I call the world, right?
But you're using your model.
Hang on, I'm talking. And I'm encountering other people that seem to be the same as me, i.e. capable of communication, capable of thinking. So because they talk to me and they give me reasons that I can understand. I think, okay, that's the same reasons going on in my head. So when I come across someone that's like me that says, hey, there's a way of talking to this God thing, right, through transcendental arguments, I'm like, oh, this is great. I have an access to new knowledge. So tell me what this knowledge is or how I access it. And the person says, the Bible, or God just magically does it. And I'm like, right, well, that's not useful to me because A, I don't see the Bible as reliable.
Of course it is not.
And B, this isn't happening. I'm not receiving any knowledge from God. I'd be aware of it because he'd be able to make me know it, right? If God could do it, right, he would be able to make me know it. But he's not. So therefore, I've got no access to it, right? So it's up to Kathleen to tell me how to do that. If she can't, then I've got no reason to believe it to be true, right?
Okay, the first thing you need to do...
I don't need to explain the universe.
I understand. Now listen. You need to hold to your own standards, okay? Now, that's why, whenever you ask Darth a question, he uses his model to explain his, knowledge about the world and to explain the things that you cannot explain in your model.
Yes, but he still has to convince me that his worldview is true.
No. He doesn't have to do shit. I mean, all he has to do is hold you to your own standards within your own model, because he's not using God to tell you you're wrong.
My standards do not negate the possibility of God. My standards just require the same standards to prove that it exists as the same as anything else, right? Now, I'm only talking about the accusation that I'm somehow being unreliable because I'm subjective is irrelevant, because of course I'm being subjective, because I'm a being in a world which I can't fully understand. Okay, I'm trying to understand
Can
it
you
as best I
fucking
can.
understand that they cannot use their worldview to convince you, and you cannot use your worldview to convince them?
I'm not
Can
trying
you
to
get
convince
that?
them. I'm trying to ask them to convince
Dude,
me.
can
And
you
their
understand
accusations
that?
I can't understand. I
Okay,
can't explain it. I'm
Can
not
you
required to
understand that?
explain
Did
it.
you agree with that?
No, because
No,
you're
what?
not. Because they're trying to sneak in this idea that I don't know something. I do know something when I
But here's
don't.
the issue.
What?
Here's the issue. When you say we need to convince you, and then you have, say, an issue with the Bible, right? And you say, okay, well, the Bible is unreliable, because of how I understand the world to be, and evolution, and astrophysics, and gravity, and B theory, and string theory, and all this other stuff, right? Okay, the issue is that you reject completely off the bat the ability, you say convince me, but then I am going to reject anything you give to me because I am not willing to take a actual look at what is going on. I'm not actually willing
that's false, because
to read this. I'm not actually willing to sit down
That's not
and
what it is.
properly
That's not what it
That's
is.
false. Look, I was a
You're saying
Christian
that I
for like
can't-
30 years. Look, being skeptical about this, it doesn't commit someone to saying I'm not willing to look at what actually could be the case. I was a fucking hardcore Christian.
Yeah,
I have no issue with skepticism.
You're making the accusation that essentially you're trying to convince yourself that I'm taking that position, but I know what my position is. Okay, the point is I'm asking you to convince me with the open mind that if there's a possibility that I can understand it, how do I go about it? And your accusation is, you're not willing to accept that, and that's not true.
The reason that I make that claim though is because the convincing method, right, the apologetic method, you just simply reject out of hand.
And that
I
happened
reject the method being reliable if you claim it.
What are you talking about?
Kathleen realized that it was problematic, that she didn't get the answers she was looking for within that model. So
if her argument is that I'm incapable of understanding, okay, because I'm not willing, because I'm not accepting the sort of premise, right? And that premise is not being accepted because I'm not understanding. She can't therefore accuse me of being disingenuous. I'm simply saying if I'm incapable of understanding it for whatever reason, for not being plugged into God, then that's the answer. But she can't therefore accuse me of being dishonest about it by saying I'm just simply not willing to accept that position. If I'm incapable of doing it, I'm incapable of doing it. Period. There's no magic way around that. I don't have a magic third eye if she's got a magic third eye, right? But she has to explain that she has this magic third eye, and she can show it.
Wait a second.
Listen.
Only Calvinists have magic third eyes, okay? That was a joke.
Okay.
I know.
Go on.
Okay. Let me.
So that's all it is. It's not a case. I'm not rejecting
If I hold to a model, listen, man, listen. If I hold to a model, that's the first step.
Models are irrelevant here beyond the very basic concept that
I will sum it up. I promise. I will be very concise. If I hold to a model that I say, you know what, the right model to have is a model which can explain everything. Okay, that's my fucking claim. That's my standard. When I analyze your model and I ask you questions, hey man, how do you explain this? How do you explain that? And whatever. I'm using my model, to interpret the world. That's what you're doing. Now listen. But whenever you are asked to explain your model, and since for your own standard, dude, you cannot explain your own fucking model, then you would have to concede that your model is also flawed.
I'm not denying my model's flawed. I know my model.
No, hold on, Caseless. Look,
it's irrelevant though.
Someone can accept that their model may be flawed and not be committed to accepting the Christian theist's idea.
Yeah, that's
of what the model
besides
should be.
The point.
Those
that's
two are not mutually exclusive.
Of course. And then she went and read some other stuff, and to her it made sense that first you have to admit that there's a God, and second of all, to her, it made sense that Christian God makes
their
sense.
model. They think that it's sensible. That's not an issue.
Okay, now, Declan, Don't try to use your model to disprove hers. You have to use their model if you want to disprove their model. The same way they are doing with yours. They are not using God to prove you're incorrect about your worldview. They are using your own standards to do so. So you are not allowed.
I've not even given anyone here my standards.
Analyzing the Christian worldview, dude. You're trying to do that.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, sure.
You don't say. You're misinterpreting this. Some weird straw man. I don't know where you're getting it from.
It's not a straw man. You're not understanding.
You're talking about models as if like these things are arbitrary or something, and it's not. It's a simple case that one day I woke up and I was conscious, right? And I had a set of tools that wherever they came from, I don't know. But I'm trying to use those tools to understand the world around me. If I lack the ability to do something that someone else can do, okay, there's going to be a limit to how much I can use that objectively, right? A blind man can only be kind of told exactly about their outside world and possibly made to understand it in a similar way, right, in an objective way. But that doesn't mean that blind man, by default, must necessarily understand that world the same way that a vision person with sight can, right? The thing is, you've got to be able to objectively explain to that person how the outside world looks, okay? And if that person's simply incapable of doing so, end of story. You'll never convince that person.
Then you are an empiricist,
you can't then
and that's fine.
Yeah, but you've got to be able to tell that person why it's wrong, okay? You can't just appeal to something that they simply cannot conceive of.
No, you have to concede that you're not a rationalist. You are an empiricist, and that's different. Okay?
I'm not an empiricist, dude.
Yes, you are. Whenever you're asking it, you're saying.
What the fuck, dude? Don't tell me what I am and aren't when I'm telling you I'm not.
Well, if you were a rationalist, you would accept the same thing that Kathleen accepted, dude.
That's hilarious.
That the fucking model you're using to interpret your world is flawed. And therefore, you need to revise your fucking model in order for you to answer these questions. You were a rationalist.
Do you honestly think I hold to a 200-year-old or something like that theory of epistemology? That I can only experience knowledge through sense perception?
Okay, so here's an issue though, right? Is we'll just use we'll just use me thing. I was convinced, right, that in order to have a complete worldview, I did actually have to account for everything. And because the worldview that I held could not account for everything, I then had to go looking for a worldview that could account for everything. And the only worldview that could account for everything and be not just account for everything, but be consistent in its accounting for everything and have evidentiary means to back up that consistency was the Christian worldview. Therefore, because I understood that to have a concise and consistent worldview, I needed to be able to account for everything and go looking for something. Well, what do you know? The only one that could do that was Christianity. Right, I was therefore logically convinced that because Christianity was the only worldview that could account for all these things and be consistent in its accountability and have an evidentiary means by which to prove that it's consistent, I accepted the Christian worldview.
Yeah, no one's denying how you came to Christian theism or theism. No one's denying that. I don't know what the point of this is.
I understand that you say that Christianity is the only consistent explanation of how the universe works, right? But that's kind of like the only argument you have against the counter argument of atheism is simply that you've got this transcendental thing. Essentially, you're saying the atheism world is exactly the same as your one, except it's got this extra little bit that says God's real, right, or Christian God's real, and that's all you're saying. But the thing is, I'm
not
asking
an extra little bit. It's saying
that it's literally the same argument.
It is saying that there is actually a way to account for all of this. That there does in fact exist a means by which all these things came to be. That is
right, and you say this is God.
That's not a little thing.
It's a little thing in the sense of like the number of it. There's only one thing, right? You're not saying there's infinite gods. There's one God, right? There's one thing. God. Right. So that's what I mean by little thing. I mean like one thing compared to like the entire rest of the universe and reality, right? So what I'm saying is you're appealing to this notion that what that thing is explained to you either transcendental revealed knowledge, we'll just call it revealed knowledge, or the Bible. Now, I don't accept the Bible because the Bible exists within the world, but I can find contradictions with other things like the colour red or other objective items that are independent of the Bible. Okay? But this notion of this revelation through God, I have to be able to understand that in order to believe what you're saying and to believe it's not just some sort of hallucination. Until you can objectively show that that's the case to me in some way,
but
I'm
I
not going
don't
to believe
have
it.
to. But I don't
You do.
have to.
You can't just declare it.
No, because you are admitting that your worldview is not consistent. I am saying that my worldview is consistent.
I've never accepted that. I've hypothetically accepted that on the basis that if it is inconsistent, that would be how you
your
show it.
worldview is wholly consistent. You think your worldview is wholly consistent, and you can account for everything in nature.
Why do I need to account for everything in nature? In principle only, yeah. The same thing, the same way you're doing it. That in principle, God can explain everything. I'm saying not God can explain everything. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I don't have to give you examples because you're assuming that I'm therefore omniscient, which neither of us are saying. So that would be a false claim if you're going that way. So I could ask you what's the temperature of planet X on the other side of the galaxy in Andromeda at the moment, or something like that. And you could say, oh, I don't know, and then I could accuse you of not knowing everything. But of course that would be unreasonable, right? Because neither of us are claiming that we have omniscience. We're just explaining that our worldview is consistent in principle. And we're addressing the principles, okay? And your principle is that God has revealed himself to you, okay? And that is the underlying contradiction that negates my worldview. Now I'm saying, in a hypothetical, I know you're convinced of that, don't get me wrong, because obviously you're explaining it to me.
I'm sick and tired of Augusta being here.
You're still not getting it, Stargate.
I am getting it. I've got it so many times in so many different ways.
You're trying to get convinced before knowing your model is
I'm just asking for
flawed.
someone else to explain a different new way that I've not thought about before.
You're not following the steps, dude.
God.
Basically,
the first is to accept that God is your Lord Savior. Yeah?
No, man, you're presupposing certain things.
There's only one
That's a
step, though,
conclusion.
Stargate. It's just to accept them. That's just,
Yeah,
it's just that one
No,
step.
that is
Just
what
give
you're
up my
trying to
brain
do.
and just accept it, yeah.
Properly basic
The fact is, under their view, your worldview is incomplete, okay? And you're trying to get them to prove you under your flawed
I would
model.
like to
We're not
hear
talking about a
that
worldview
they are wrong.
basis in the case of individual
Yes,
examples.
we
though.
are.
We're talking, no, we're
Yes,
not.
we
We're
are.
talking about individual. We're talking about overriding principles that differentiate them. Because that's the only thing we can address.
Holy fucking shit. Okay,
Right,
that's
how do you know that in the Andromeda Galaxy there isn't a rock somewhere that proves my argument that's written on it from some alien being? You don't know
what
that.
model am I going to use to know that?
Exactly.
Your
You can't use
worldview or
anything.
mine?
You can't use anything, but you
Your
can't count it,
worldview
right?
or mine?
So it's
Or
meaningless.
theirs?
It's meaningless to try and argue from the idea of individual
No,
evidence.
Starkey.
We can only
You're
argue
not
from
fucking understanding, dude.
Oh, well, now you've
If
gone back
I
to your
am
argument. I'm not understanding.
using your
I'm
model,
explaining to you
listen,
why I
I
understand
will
it.
be
You're turning
using
around
your
and
rules. Stargate, if I were to use your model to interpret that information,
just try and think about what I'm saying, dude, instead of just responding, I'm not
I understand what you're saying,
We understand
man.
what you're saying, but
Trust
what
me,
we're
I
saying is
understand what you're
that
saying.
under our worldview, we
That's
can
what I
account for what goes on in Andromeda or in, all the other planets.
Yes, I know, and the answer is this God-revealed
around.
knowledge thing.
Yeah, and the innate word of him.
Okay, but
in his
Kath,
holy
can you
book.
give me an example of good circular reasoning other than anything that relates to God?
An example of good circular reasoning
don't
sure. This pot pie is good. I say that it is good. Therefore, it is good. That's good circular reasoning. By the way, none is good but the Father. So don't forget that.
And you think that was most valid and sound?
I mean, it worked though, did it not? Because I make banging pot
I
pie.
should have said that was redundant, but you think that's sound?
Do I think that sound that my pot pie is banging?
No, the argument.
That my pot pie is banging?
The argument. Do you think the argument you just gave is sound?
Do I think that the argument that my pot pie is banging is a sound argument? Yeah, I think it is.
You thought that was a sound argument?
Yeah.
Do you know what sound means?
Stop flinging a knife around with me. I'm trying to serve you pot pie. Hey, this is my kitchen. You don't have to be in it.
Having two different conversations at once.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My wife and kid came home, so now.
That's fine.
So yeah, actually, I'm gonna get off of here. It's been wonderful to speak to you guys, really. But I've got a family that I now must take care of. So
Yeah, we're here every day. Come back.
Talk to you all later.
Have a great day.
Yeah, I've noticed that you guys are like on all the time. That's another reason I like the server, because the other one that I'm on is dead. half the
Come
time,
back
so
and we'll talk
anyway.
about tranny stuff or something.
Yeah, I'll come back and talk about tranny stuff. It'll be fun.
All right.
Have a good night.
No fapping.
False.